Hey, what's going on, guys? So Subnautica 2 just got its first hotfix, and this one is really aimed at smoothing out a few of the rough edges people ran into right after launch. The big thing here is that the update is not trying to change the whole game or add a bunch of new content. It is more about cleaning up the early problems so people can actually get in and play without tripping over the same issues again. Unknown World said it went out after community reports came in, and the fixes are supposed to show up the next time you launch the game. The most noticeable change is the startup crash message for AMD graphics cards and DirectX 12 problems. Instead of leaving players with a vague error and not much else, the new pop-up is supposed to give more guidance and support, which is a pretty practical fix because startup issues are the kind of thing that can kill momentum fast. If somebody hits a crash before they even get to the menu, the last thing they need is a confusing message that tells them nothing. So this is one of those updates that might not sound huge at first, but for the people actually dealing with it, it makes a real difference. There's also a fix for an infrequent crash tied to the ping feature. That sounds like a pretty specific problem, but those are usually the ones that end up being the most annoying because they do not happen every single time. They just show up at the worst possible moment and make you question whether your setup is the issue or the game itself. When a game is in early access, stuff like this is exactly what you expect to get cleaned up early on because players are testing systems that are still being shaped in real time. So this hotfix is basically doing that quiet behind-the-scenes work that helps the whole experience feel a lot more stable. The other part of the update is a little less visible in moment-to-moment gameplay, but it matters too. Unknown World says analytics will only be enabled after you accept the terms of service, and they also reduce the amount of data being sent to backend services. On top of that, they reminded players that analytics can still be turned off from the settings menu anytime. That is the kind of thing people tend to care about more once they hear it explained clearly, because it is not just about bug fixes, it is also about how the game handles player data and what gets sent where. They also said terms of service changes and a FAQ addressing current concerns are coming soon. So it looks like this update is part of a broader cleanup effort rather than a one-off patch. What stands out to me is that this feels like a pretty focused response to the first wave of early access feedback. The studio is not trying to pretend everything is perfect. It is basically saying, yeah, we saw the problems, here's the fix, here is better guidance for the crash cases, here is a more careful approach to analytics, and here is a smaller data footprint overall. That is a decent sign when it's this early because the first updates after release tell you a lot about how seriously the team is watching the community and how quickly they are willing to react. And since this hotfix may roll out at different times around the world, plus the Xbox version still needs certification before it goes live there, it is also one of those updates where not everybody is going to see it at exactly the same moment. So yeah, that is the shape of this update. Not some massive overhaul, not a giant content drop, just a practical set of fixes aimed at crashes, clear startup errors, and a more transparent approach to analytics and data handling. For a game that is still settling into early access, that kind of patch is usually the one players feel the most, because it removes friction without making a big fuss about it. And that is usually a good sign for where the game is headed next.